Welcome inside to Keeping It Real with Alexander Garrett. Now, as you know, the show does get political at times, but we're going to take a little bit of break about politics because I'm sure many of you are anxious about what Donald Trump has to say tonight and in his big Oval Office address on immigration and the wall. We'll see what he says, but are you feeling anxious about it? Well, maybe there's someone on the line with me right now who can ease your anxiousness about that, about life. Dr. Margaret Paul is on the line with me. How are you, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Alex?
Good. So, yes, we need to be free of anxiousness. And so you've written a book called Divine Dieting, and it's all about curing anxiety. It's about food for, your thought process and food for, obviously, your body. But talk about divine dieting and how we can get rid of anxiousness and why you pursued helping people with anxiety.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about. So the book is called Diet for Divine Connection, and it's beyond junk foods and junk thoughts to at-will divine connection. And this very much relates to anxiety because anxiety generally comes from three different places. It can come from unhealed childhood abuse, which I'm not going to be talking about now. It can come from a disruption in our gut, our microbiome, where we're eating junk foods, we're eating sugar, we're eating the industrial seed oils, the vegetable oils that's in almost everything, and this creates a huge imbalance in our gut where the bad bacteria take over and create a lot of toxicity, and that toxicity goes right up into our brain and creates anxiety and depression. And so that's one of the reasons why there's so much more anxiety and depression than there used to be, is because of the processed foods that people eat. If they go into fast foods, all they're getting is these carbs, the sugar, and these industrial seed oils that everything's cooked in. And then they wonder why they feel so bad, why they feel so anxious and depressed. So that's one of the major causes. And the other major cause, which I also talk about in this book, is what I call self-abandonment, where so many people have learned to treat themselves in ways that they would never, for example, treat a child, where they ignore their own feelings, they numb them out with addictions, they judge themselves harshly, they hand over to other people the responsibility, they just numb out in so many different ways. And what people don't realize is that all of our feelings, even our anxiety and our depression, have such vital information for us. Our feelings are actually a form of inner guidance, and our peaceful, happy feelings, our filled up feelings let us know that we're loving ourselves, just like a child. Child's feeling happy and peaceful. That's a pretty good indication that their parents are doing a good job. And if the children are feeling anxious and depressed, that's a pretty good indication that something's wrong. Well, it's the same thing on the inner level. So our anxiety is letting us know that we're telling ourselves things and treating ourselves in ways that are making us feel bad. So instead of trying to avoid the anxiety, I teach people to move towards it, to embrace it, and to open to learning about what the anxiety is telling us.
Now, you flew to New York, and that's how I met you at the National Publicity Summit. What drew you to New York? Did you want to see if people in New York, how they were finding out their anxiety? Like, what drew you to come here to push this, to give us your thoughts?
Well, because I wanted to attend the National Publicity Summit. I'd had friends that attended. It's really important to me to get this information out there. There are so many people that are suffering. And one of the things that just breaks my heart is like when I hear about people like Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain killing themselves, that just absolutely breaks my heart because I know that if they knew how to learn to love themselves, which is the process that I teach, inner bonding, teaches people how to truly love themselves, and if they understood that probably the way they were eating was causing so many of the feelings, what happens is that people get depressed like they were, or anxious, and then they go to a doctor, and the psychiatrist doesn't really know what else to do other than to give them medication. Well, the problem is that medications also disrupt the gut. It makes it worse. And the research does show that these medications often have side effects of both homicide and suicide. And in fact, all the mass shooters, if you look up the information, and it's documented in my book, Diet for Divine Connection, all the mass shooters have been on these psychotropic drugs, every one of them. And so they have these side effects that are not publicized because, of course, the drug companies don't want that out there. And it's not publicized that that most of the food, well, all of them in the fast food, and most of the food in a regular market, and even organic food has the sugar and has the vegetable oils that cause so much illness and so much toxicity. They don't want you to know that because they make so much money on it.
Right.
And so it's really important to me to get this information out there.
And I do believe it comes internally. I mean, all these killing, suicides and even mass shootings, there's something there that causes one to unfortunately shoot up a place or kill themselves because there's that lacking that they have of lack of love for themselves, lack of love for others. And here in New York, we're dealing still with suicides seemingly most of the time here. So for New Yorkers that are anxious, whether it's anxiety about waiting for a subway even, or
right,
about a job or something here in this big city, the hustle bustle, what is your message for New Yorkers? What did you observe when you came here in October, and what message do you have?
New York is not a place that I would like to live. I'm very glad that I live in Colorado on a ranch, and I don't have that hustle and bustle. But even if people choose to live there, they don't have to be so affected by the external environment. One of the things that I teach people is how to access a higher source of love, of comfort, of wisdom, of truth. It's not as hard as people think it is to open. We all have this information, and it's actually been scientifically proved that this information is here for us, and this love and this comfort is here for us. But most people don't know how to access it. And so instead, they're operating out of their very limited and programmed mind. And that mind is telling them things that cause anxiety and depression. Oh, I'm going to miss the train, or I'm going to lose my job, or what's going to happen? I'm going to end up on the streets. I'm a loser. I'm never going to be good enough. Blah 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 blah. Nobody loves me. All of these judgments that come from this program mind that we learned as we were growing up from our parents, from peers, from religious people, a whole lot of ways, and from teachers, a whole lot of ways that we learned to judge ourselves. Well, of course that's going to create anxiety. So then you judge yourself, you make yourself feel terrible, and then you don't pay attention to the fact that your terrible feeling is coming from all these self-judgments. So then you turn to food or alcohol or drugs or television or pornography or whatever it is to avoid your feelings, or you look for somebody who will love you because you're not loving yourself, and that in itself creates a lot of relationship problems. And so there's so much self-rejection, self-abandonment going on that's creating this anxiety. It's not just New Yorkers. It happens everywhere.
And so talk about your story, because I see that you felt, and you write in the book, Dieting for Divine Connection, about your family life and how you felt a bit suppressed by your family. Did that really grow on you and inspire you to look for ways to channel that and then help others channel it as well?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. I was an only child. My mother was a narcissist. She was a narcissist and angry, and I got the brunt of it because I was the only child. And so I was a very anxious and nervous kid. And my father was pretty good till adolescence when he decided that it was his right to sexually abuse me, to teach me about sex. And so I had to stay away from him. And so I had very, very painful adolescent years, very lonely and depressed and anxious. And at one time, I did contemplate suicide. And I went into many different forms of therapy, so many different forms of therapy to try and heal this pain, this shame, this guilt, this anxiety and depression and anger and aloneness that I felt so much. And none of the therapies that I went into actually healed any of this. And I became a therapist, and I practiced traditional psychotherapy for 17 years, and I just wasn't happy with the results for me or others. And that's when I started to seek a process that would really work to heal these painful feelings. And that's when actually Spirit kind of downloaded the inner bonding process. That's when I met the co-creator, Dr. Erica Chopich. She had half the process, I had half the process, and Spirit just kind of downloaded these 6 steps. And that was so life-changing for me, Alex. I cannot tell you. It's like day and night what happened for me when I started practicing those 6 steps.
And we'll get to those in one second, but I want to say that divine to me also means there's a connection with God. Have you felt his presence with you through this time?
Oh, all the time. I mean, that's how I live my life right now. I feel that connection to God, which is love. The Bible says God is love. And so when we open to God, we open to love. We open to that unconditional love coming into us and guiding us every moment. Every one of us has that incredible love and wisdom and guidance here for us. When we open to it, most people don't know how to open to it is the problem. And so
Yes.
then they feel so alone.
And so what would you say is the best way, and how do you write in your book, what's the best way for people to connect with God along this journey?
Okay, so this is what I write about in the book. First of all, it's about what I call frequency, which is Spirit exists at a higher frequency, and that's why we can't see them. We exist at a lower enough frequency so that we can see each other. If we vibrated like a hummingbird's wings, for example, we wouldn't be able to see each other. So our bodies vibrate at a fairly low frequency, but we can learn to raise the frequency of our energy. And like I write about in the book, it takes 2 things. One, it takes eating well. You can't be eating sugar and junk foods and these oils and have a high frequency. It lowers your frequency. It makes you feel bad. It makes you feel sick. Creates toxicity. So these foods are dumbing people down because it's preventing them from accessing their inner knowing, from accessing the love that's really there and the wisdom that's really there. And it makes people be easily controlled. Like other people will tell them what to do and they'll just listen because they can't tune in to what's really right for them. And that's pretty scary. I mean, that's a lot what's happening in our society today politically, is that people don't know how to tune in to what's true. And so then they listen to what other people are saying instead of really knowing who's telling the truth and who isn't.
Well, right. And I just yesterday on my podcast, I was talking about the IRS refunds and all that because, that's a big worry for people. How will we get the money? And do you feel, and with the shutdown too, do you feel like in general we're too tied to the economic part of all of this, or do you feel like we're supposed to be tied to it as much as we are?
My sense about what's happening is that this has to be happening right now because I think there's a huge shift in the frequency of our planet towards kindness and towards love. And so anything that's not kind and is not loving needs to be coming to the surface right now. And I think it would be very helpful for people in terms of their anxiety if they really knew and believed that what's happening needs to happen in order for more kindness, more caring, more love to be on the planet, and for people to really understand how to access that. And so what I was saying is one of the things is the food, but the other, in the inner bonding process, there's only two intentions. One is the intention to protect against your pain with some form of controlling behavior, whether it's self-judgment or addictions or television, whatever. The other is to open to learning about truth and love and about learning to love yourself. And when people truly open to learning and they're eating well, their frequency automatically goes high enough to access that love and that truth and that wisdom. And people are amazed when I start to work with them what happens when they start to eat well and they open to learning. Suddenly they have this access, and that's what happened for me, because I tried for years. I knew that was available, but I didn't know how to access it. And when I finally put together that it was both about what we put in our bodies and our thoughts, that we can't have junk food or junk thoughts, and when we are open to learning, we can access that love and that wisdom. It's very profound.
And there was a very a nice quote that I picked up on in your book, Dieting for Divine Connection, and it's called My Food Diet and My Thought Diet, and it sounds like you touched on it right there, and I just think that's so powerful, because we need to feed our thoughts with positivity. And I tell you, the internet is good with that at times. As crazy as it is, there's great memes out there that say, you've got this, and there's really uplifting messages out there that people...
Alex, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Can you say that again?
Oh, sure. So I was saying, you touched on this with one line that I really thought was great, the food diet and the thought diet. And right now, there's people out there sharing positive thoughts, and as crazy as the internet is, I feel like there's a market for positivity, and a lot of these different pages and all that are coming through with great quotes. I don't know if you've noticed that over the last few months, but I've certainly noticed it.
Yeah, and so there's a polarization happening where when darkness starts to come to the surface, that ignites people to move towards the light. And I think that's what's beginning to happen here, is more and more people are saying, we've got to take action. We've got to come from our hearts. We've got to care about each other. One of the things that's so important, Alex, is that as we learn to love ourselves, and the inner bonding process teaches us that, as we learn to really see who we are in our soul essence, the beauty that we are inside, we start to see that in everybody else. And that creates something that is so vitally important right now, which is a sense of oneness, that we, on the spiritual level, are all one. And when we know this, then we can't hurt ourselves and we can't hurt others. And so at this time, it's so vitally important that people do their inner work to discover how beautiful and incredible they are inside, so that they can see that in each person, each living thing that they come in contact with. They can't possibly kill themselves or others. They can't possibly hurt themselves or others when they know who they really are.
And working on yourselves, do you feel like we're running out of time with working on ourselves, or do you think we still have time to do that as the world progresses?
I don't feel that we're running. I don't think that there's such a thing as running out of time. Time is relative, and we each do what we can do, but what's exciting about this time is that I think more and more people are beginning to do the work that they need to do to know who they truly are as loving and beautiful beings, and beginning to share that with others. If you just look at the diversity that's in the house right now, I think that's fantastic. That people are moving beyond gender, that they're moving beyond religion and ethnicity, into seeing that we're all one and valuing each person. That's what has to happen here.
And we shall see how that happens politically. But I agree, and I think also there's diversity. There's also a few people who are disabled in the Congress, which I'm really proud of. As you know, who listen to this podcast, I rollerblade on one leg around the city. So when I see these guys out there, truly including and how inclusive Congress has been, I get very excited about that. Now,
yeah, me too.
Dr. Paul, there's one person who that I'm sure many people know, and I'm going to play a clip from her right now, that endorses your inner bonding. Listen to Alanis Morissette talking about this whole process created by Dr. Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Inner bonding really nurtures and fosters the relationship between self and spirit, and self and parts of the wounded self, and the essential core self or authentic self, depending upon what you choose to call it. And it allows for great healing with one's own self and healing of traumas from the past, and nurturance of self to the point where we can actually show up for functional relationships in our day-to-day life.
And that is actually from innerbonding.com. And so, Dr. Paul, how did you get Alanis Morissette to jump on board with this project, with these ideas?
Well, I didn't get her to. She chose to. She discovered inner bonding. She read some of my books. She started to do the work. She became a good friend of mine. She's been wonderful. She's a wonderful, loving, supportive person. And she was guided. I'm sure she was guided to inner bonding because it's been very, very powerful in her life. And I've got a new book coming out in March, which she just gave me a fantastic endorsement for, letting me know that she just would not be where she is right now without having done this work. So I feel very blessed that she supports this work, as do many other well-known people. And, when people really learn and practice inner bonding, which actually they can learn if they go to our website at innerbonding.com, they can take a free course and start to learn the process. But people don't need to spend a lot of money to learn inner bonding. I make it very, very available because I want everybody to have the benefit of this process. And so I'm really hopeful that more and more people will, open up their hearts and realize they have healing to do, and that this process helps them heal very rapidly.
Well, dieting for the Divine Connection, Dr. Margaret Paul, I'm so happy that you've been able to join us tonight. And really quickly, of the 6 steps of inner bonding, which ones would you say are the most important to highlight? Because to me,
well, they're all important, but you have to start with step 1. And step 1 is moving out of mind focus and becoming mindful of what's happening in your body, because you can't pay attention to your feelings and learn from them if you don't even know that you're feeling. Like if you have a baby and instead of having a baby monitor on, you just stick a baby in a crib and go out to lunch and you don't know what's going on. That's what people do with themselves. So step 1 is learning to get present inside, listening for your feelings, and then opening to learning about what they're trying to tell you and wanting responsibility for them. That's the heart of what inner bonding is about.
And I'll be honest, sometimes I get anxious and I start chewing my fingers, and I'm sure people out there have that same issue. So for those who feel that anxious, what advice do you have for us?
Okay, so as soon as you're that anxious, you want to take some deep breaths, go inside, get present with the anxiety. Instead of trying to get rid of it by chewing your nails or whatever, go inside and get present. It's like sitting with an anxious child. That's what you want to do, is sit inside with your feelings. And then you want to open to learning, and you want to ask inside, what are you doing? What are you telling yourself? How are you currently treating yourself that's causing the anxiety? It's too easy to think that it's coming from something external. Everybody thinks it's coming from something external, but it's not. It's coming from what you're telling yourself about what's happening externally, and it's coming from how you're treating yourself and the kind of self-abandonment that's going on. So that's what I encourage you to do, is go inside, breathe into it, ask, okay, what am I telling myself right now? What did I just say to myself right now that's making me feel anxious?
Well, I would definitely do that because it kind of goes beyond fingernails. I actually chew pen caps and all that stuff. It's kind of a big health scare for some around me. Anyway, I will take that in and process that as I re-listen to this podcast and moving forward. So, Dr. Paul, best way to get in touch with you would be?
Go to innerbonding.com, and up in the right-hand corner, there is a phone number. You can call that, get any information you need. Like I said on the website, there's a free course. There's thousands of articles. There's all kinds of help for people if they want it.
You have a Twitter, by the way. Do you have a Twitter handle?
I do, Inner Bonding.
All right. Well, we'll follow you there. We'll tag you on there. And thank you so much, Dr. Paul, for joining me tonight on Keeping It Real with Alexander
You're
Garrett.
very welcome. Thank you for having me, Alex.
And hopefully when you come back to New York, we'll link up and chat and see how things have progressed.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right. I'm Alexander Garrett, Keeping It Real once again here. And thank you to Dr. Paul. And we will see you soon on Spreaker and elsewhere.